Hello and welcome to a standard deck profile. Today I want to talk about Krysrain, a deck that has languished in the low tiers for most of its lifespan, but with this last set has catapulted into the top tiers, now being arguably one of the best decks in the format and definitely one of the best aggressive decks. Krysrain is a deck based around getting a board full of units with different names to activate the Vanguard's powerful effects, and then using the Vanguard's Divine Skill to give its power and crit to another unit to hit for tremendous numbers that are very threatening. As a result, Krysrain can kind of play a bit of a toolbox because you can diversify your cards to have a variety of effects that you can try to search for when you need. And you're also just capable of hitting really big numbers because you're taking full advantage of a bunch of cards that have been printed specifically for this deck. Its support is pretty great now, and a lot of Krysrain's, or not a lot, some of Krysrain's support is so good that it sees play in other decks not intended for it. So we're going to see how this deck can leverage those cards to the fullest. Its only real weakness is that it kind of can suffer from fake hand syndrome, and it does have a hard limit on how long the game can go. Once you are at 5 face down damage, you are done. You are a vanilla 3 attack deck with nothing else going on. So you do need to end the game eventually. You do not have inevitability in any matchup. So without any further ado, let's get into the list, starting with our ride deck. The deck is starter agnostic. You can play whatever starter has the best artwork. And then we play Mermaid Idol Sedna and Top Idol Aqua. This card has the effect when it's written over by the grade 2. You Soul Blast 1, you check the top 7 for a grade 2 or greater, and add it to hand. It has to be a unit card, I believe. Oh, no, just grade 2 or greater. No, yeah, grade 2 or greater unit card. I was right the first time. And then Top Idol Aqua, when you ride over it with a Mermaid grade 3, you check the top 5 and add a grade 2 or greater card from among them to your hand. These can both add Persona Ride, and they can basically get anything we care about from our deck for the most part. So they're a great way to try to fill out your hand with missing pieces because they're a big check, and also just try to make sure you have enough cards in hand to field an aggressive board. But with this ride line, and it's relatively low cost, just Soul Blast 1 and then free, we're able to generally get everything we need from the ride line without much fuss. And then we get to our new grade 3. The lighting is kind of bad right now in my room. This is Faded One of Ever-Changing Krysrain Cadenza. This card has the effect that you counterblast 1 as an act skill, and you choose any number of your units and perform the following effects based on the number you have. If you have 4 with different names, you pick 1. Or sorry, you perform one of the following, and then if you have 4, you pick 2, and if you have 5, you pick all of them. So the first effect is draw a card and energy charge 3. Great effect, no notes. The second effect is that you choose a unit and give it 15k power. The third effect is that this unit gets crit. And the fourth effect is that you choose one of your rear guards and it gets red text that it returns to your hand at the end of the turn. So great overall abilities. Kind of does anything you could possibly want. That 15k power being able to be distributed wherever is really solid. Then we have our Divine Skill that at the end of the battle, this unit attacked a grade 3 or greater unit, so you can't use this going first on turn 3. Soul Blast 1 and choose any number of your rear guards, return them to hand, and choose up to 1 unit card from your hand and call to R, and then increase or decrease its power and crit to match this unit. So that's a excellent effect. It means that you have 2 playstyles available to this deck, generally speaking, at any given time. You can go all in on the Vanguard's power to get another unit to also be gigantic and with crit and very threatening. Or you can split the power and power up a rear guard, which we can restand. We have a restander now, and you can use that to have 2 very threatening things. And then even if you use Divine Skill, you'll have a third very threatening attacker. I'll show the fruits of either option later when I get to the attack patterns. But overall, Krysrain Cadenza is a great Vanguard. We're of course playing 3 Persona Rides. We're in an aggro deck. We need to get as much power as possible. Then we're playing 4 Francettes. This card is custom made for Krysrain, but has been seeing play in a lot of lyrical decks. What this card does is when it's chosen by the effect of your grade 3 or greater Krysrain, you choose your Vanguard and it gets 10k power until end of turn. And then when this unit attacks, if you have 3 or more units with different card names, this unit gets 5k until end of turn. And if you have 4 more different card names, then at the end of the battle, you choose one of your other rear guards and return it to hand. Great effect. With this and Krysrain's red text effect on the last part of its ability, we're going to be able to clear out our board of every unit in play every single turn. which is very good. Then we're playing 3 copies of Emphatic Rhyme Armel. On place, you may soul charge 1, and then if you have a grade 3 or greater Krysrain Vanguard, you can choose one of your units and give it 5k, and then you can counter +1 and draw a card, and this unit gets 5k until end of turn. So you can divide up those 2 power increases however you want. You can either be buffing up your Vanguard, or perhaps another restander, or you can just dump both on it, or you can dump the first one on itself and then it powers up from the second effect. So you can make this unit pretty big, or you can split it up so that your board is just generally improved, whichever is better based on the situation. And then it has act skill on R once per turn. If you have a grade 3 or greater Vanguard with Krysrain in its name and you played a normal order, and you played an order, rather. We have high 5, so that's going to be our order. You energy blast 3, and you choose a grade 1 card without Sentinel from your drop, and if you do not have a rearguard with that name, you call it to R. Excellent effect. We're going to be able to reuse tech pieces, and we're going to be able to reuse our restander every single turn with that. It's just a great ability overall. And then we're playing 2 copies of Morning Practice in the Calm Sea Tolmana. Oh, sorry. This card has on place, if you have a grade 3 or greater Krysrain Vanguard, Soul Blast 2 cards with different names, and search for grade 1 without Sentinel, and reveal it. And if you don't have a rearguard with the same card name, call it to R, and that unit gets 5k. This is going to help us find any piece we need. And then when this unit attacks, if you have a grade 3 or greater Krysrain Vanguard, and your opponent's Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, this unit gets 5k, making it probably one of the worst attackers in the deck in terms of our grade 2s, but the Hard Search effect is more than worth it. But a lot of times you're not going to actually attack with this. You're going to end up calling it to back row center or something. Just keep that in mind. This card's also very important for our Divine skill, but I'll get to that later. Then we have 2 energy cyclers, Dazzle Bubble, Paradise Pressia. We make 6 energy a turn from turn 3 onwards of this deck, so we often have the extra energy to pay for these. Then we have 1 ace unit, Octavia. Only 1 ace unit per deck. You can only activate its unique skill once per battle, or once per fight, I mean. And when it's placed on R, other than during the battle phase, it gets 5k, and then you energy blast 3 and draw a card, and choose one of your rearguards, and it gets red text. At the end of the turn, you may return it to your hand. And then when it attacks, if your opponent's Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, it gets 5k, and if 2 or more of your rearguards are placed this turn, it gets another 5k. So this is potentially one of the bigger attackers in the deck, especially if you place it on a turn where it's going to be attacking a grade 3. Great card overall. It's another nice way to use energy in the early to mid game, and we're going to also be able to use it in early rush scenarios to help protect our other rearguards that we're rushing down with and bounce them back to hand. We don't care if this dies, really. It's not central to our game plan, but we'd like to be able to attack with a Fran set early and protect it. Plus, with this giving a red text effect to something else, potentially we can use Fran set to bounce this, and then this will bounce the Fran set, and then we can leave no front row, so the opponent has to attack the Vanguard and not damage an Eyes. Then we get to the grade 1s, and we're playing 4 copies of Moderate Mint Rochelle. This is our restander. When your grade 3 or greater Vanguard Krysrain in its name attacks, energy blast 3 and put this into Soul, and you draw a card, and you choose a rearguard that, if a rearguard has not stood by card effect this turn, then you choose a rearguard chosen by your Vanguard's ability, and you stand it. So remember, your Krysrain is going to pick your whole board, essentially, when you activate that act skill, so anything will be a good target. But you're generally going to be putting this on the opposite column from a Fran set in front of a Yuika, and you're going to be standing the Fran set. It's the most common use. Great restander. Then you're going to Soul Blast it out, probably with the Yuika, and you're going to loop this grade 1 every single turn by combining it with your Armel, which can energy blast 3 to call a grade 1 from drop. So you're going to spend 6 energy every turn, but you're going to gain 6 energy every turn. So it should be neutral. And if you end up being able to play one of these from hand, instead of calling from drop, then you can use that 3 energy on something else like the Ace unit or a Cycler. Then we have 3 copies of Yuika. Yuika is a classic lyrical staple. It has been for a long time now, ever since it got printed. What it does is when another unit's placed in the same column, it gets 5k if your opponent's Vanguard's grade 3 or greater. And then at the end of the battle it boosts, you can Soul Blast 1 to bounce the card it boosted. Great effect overall. 13k boosters are always strong, and being able to bounce the card in front of this and then pick it for the red text for Krysrain Cadenza skill means that we're going to be able to clear out our whole board every single turn. Then we're playing a 1 of Full Illumination Veritin. This card is essentially going to be an 18k if your opponent's Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, and 4 or more of your units replace this turn. So it's always going to be an 18k because we're going to bounce our whole board and call our whole board every single turn. So the purpose of this is just to search it off of Tolmana with to get a big boosted column on Divine Skill, which I'll show what that looks like later. Then we have 1 copy of Blue-Haired Prodigy Resius. When this unit's placed on R, choose one of your other units and it gets 10k. This can either be used to increase your Vanguard's power on a turn you want to go into Divine Skill, or it can be played to boost the Rearguard's power if you're going all in on a restanding Rearguard. So it's kind of flexible. Aside from that, we basically can just search this when we need it or whatever, and we can discard it to ride and get it back with our Mel whenever we need it. Nice, useful niche card. It's going to help us hit bigger numbers and win the game. Then we're playing 1 copy of Rainbow Jewel Beast Ulpraise. This is our Jewel Beast. All the Jewel Beasts have have a very similar effect. When you guard with them, you can put 2 cards from your ride deck from soul or drop back into the ride deck face up, and you get 15k shield for a total of 20. Or for the same cost, when you call them to rear, you can do a unique effect. And for the lyrical one, it's we pick a card with the same name as our Vanguard from soul or drop and put it in hand. So it just secures a Persona ride for later. Mostly we're going to be searching for this to bounce to our hand with our Divine Skill or something to get extra shield value to survive the opponent's next turn. Then we're playing 3 PGs with different names. Occasionally you're going to have to call a PG to fulfill Krysrain's effect, and it's going to be fine because especially if you're using Divine Skill, you're going to bounce these back to hand later anyways. Then 1 Elementaria, mandatory card for almost every deck. We're playing 1 Fire Regardless. We don't want to spend our order slot on a Regardless piece because we want to spend it on high 5, and this card will just help us check the top 5 for any missing piece we don't have, which is always nice. And we can discard it for ride and stuff because it can be played from drop. Then we're playing 4 high 5s. These can be played from drop, and they bind themselves when you play them, so they're good discard fodder. And they have the effect that you draw a card, and you reveal a card from hand, and you call it if it's a unit, and you discard it if it's not. It has to be grade less than or equal to your Vanguard. And then the unit you called gets 5k, and red text that when it leaves R, it chooses you choose one of your units and give that unit 5k. So that's going to be really good because we're going to bounce a lot of our units, so we're going to be able to get that 5k mid-combat basically every time. Then we get to the triggers. We're just playing 4 vanilla heals. You can split these with some effect heals, and it might be better because then you have unique names in case you have to call triggers for Krysrain's ability. Technically speaking, to be optimal, if all your vanilla triggers should be different named versions of the same effect, and you can easily afford to mix in effect triggers with the trigger lineup just for more name diversity, but it's not really that big a deal, to be honest. So then we're playing 4 vanilla crits, and then another 2 vanilla crits with different arts to diversify at least a little bit. And then I'm playing 2 of the effect crits. We do occasionally want to increase our soul just a little bit, so playing effect triggers that affect the soul is a free way to do that. And then I'm playing 2 shield fronts and 1 soul front, both for the unique name and also because occasionally we do need the extra soul. And then 1 blue over trigger. You could play the red over trigger as well, or the dark over trigger, or the purple one, however you want to call it. Because we don't have any native way to countercharge. So the purple OT being able to grab a card from damage is effectively a countercharge, which is nice. So that's the deck. Let's show you what the attack pattern looks like, and I'm going to show all these with Persona Ride math just to show off the numbers, and then I'm also going to show no Divine Skill focusing on Vanguard, Divine Skill focusing on Rearguard, and the anti-prison line, because this deck has a very good prison matchup because it's able to essentially hard counter prison. So all of our board states, we're generally going to want the same setup of units. I'll use Blue-Haired Prodigy Resius just to show off how big the numbers can get. We're going to want a Yuika, and in front of the Yuika, we're going to call a Francette to get that additional power. On the other side, we're going to call this card, and we're going to call the Restander behind it, and we're going to also make sure that we have a Tolmana in hand. It's going to be very useful. We don't need the Tolmana in hand, but we'd like to have it for our highest possible power ceiling. Then I'm going to shuffle I'll keep a Persona right in my hand as well, just to make it easier later so I don't have to search it. I'm going to shuffle, and I'm going to assume that I have, say that since this is a Persona right turn, I'm going to assume I'm at 4 damage. And, oh, and I'm also going to need a high 5 to go off. So, and I'll assume I have like 5 cards in hand too, besides, or I'll assume I have another 4 cards in hand on top of the cards that I've already searched, just to try to accurately thin down what the deck should be at. We're gonna assume we're at 4 damage, and then let's also just put like 3 cards in the drop. We'll have this hand, and let's just add like 4 more cards to my hand face down. It's not going to matter that much. I'm just trying to compress the deck down to like a realistic number. Let's move these up a bit. Okay. So, since it's a Persona 2, let's draw, and let's Persona. And then let's assume that I played everything in an optimal sequence, and I've activated a high 5. So, Yuika should have +5 from calling a Francet in front of it. Since we're not doing a Divine Skill turn, let's assume that Restius is given 10k to this Francet, because we want that to be huge. Let's assume that when we played this, we gave 5k to Francet, and then let's also assume we counterblasted and gave it 5k to itself. When we activated our Vanguard skill, let's assume we gave the 15 over here. And then, because we've chose a Francet, let's give our Vanguard 10k. Let's get that Persona Ride marker on the table. Let's also assume we call this with high 5, so that it got another 5k. And it has the red text, it'll give 5k to something else. So that's what our board should look like. Currently, we'd start things off by swinging this boosted. This will be a nice 10, 20, 30, 38, which is a pretty good number. That's 2 15ks to guard. And then we would swing here. This would increase its power by 5k because we have 3 or more units with different names. And then at the end of the battle, we'd bounce this to hand. It leaves the battlefield, so we'd give its 5k from its red text to Francet to set up for a big restand. We'd swing, we also would have to assume that we activated our Krysrain, and that we gave the red text here. And we would move this to Soul to stand our Francet when our Vanguard attacks. Drawing the card as well. And then doing our Twin Drive, we hit no triggers, but that's fine. And then we swing Francet again. This effect is not once per turn, so it's going to get another 5k. And we're also going to bounce this card to hand at the end of turn because we had 4 units. And then the Yuika will Soul Blast out our Restander. Very important to Soul Blast this out first for any cost. And then Yuika will bounce the Francet. And at the end of turn, Krysrain Cadenza's effect will bounce Yuika. So we have emptied our hand completely, and we have added these 6 cards to it. Meaning that we have a pretty decent-sized hand to pass back into the next turn. That's a non-Divine Skill attack pattern. It's pretty solid. Let's assume this is a Divine Skill turn instead. So, very similar board state. We're going to have Yuika and Francet. 5k to Yuika. And then we're going to have the Restander over here and the Armel over there as well. And we're still going to do the same thing. We're going to call this here. But let's put everything on the Vanguard this time. I'm going to put these at the bottom to see if we can hit like 1 trigger in these drive checks so I can show off the power a little bit better. This will still be called by the high 5, so it'll have the 5k from high 5. It'll give 5k to itself when we pay that, and it'll give 5k to the Vanguard with its on-play spec. We'll pick the board. Krysrain will give this, Krysrain will give this 10k when it's chosen. We picked itself for the effect, and then we gave it 5k with that effect, and then we'll give it 10k from Restius. So I believe this is the number it should be at now. And then we can go to battle. We'd swing here again for... we unfortunately have to do this like awkward pattern where we swing again here. This is still going to be 38, which is fine. And this will be smaller than last time. It'll just be 25. So you can swing this first and bounce this Resius, actually, because it's only a 3k increase. Let's do that, actually. So we'll swing here, bounce the Resius for a 15. We'll swing here for a 38. And then we'll swing with Krysrain, moving this to Soul, drawing a card. And then drive checking twice. Still no trigger. That's fine. And Divine Skill, we'd Soul Blast out the Restander. And bounce any number of units. We just bounce this. This will be stood because we the Restander's effect. And then we'll call... Sorry about the cough. We'll call this Tolmana from earlier. Soul Blast 2 cards with different names. And now we search for a 1. So, we'll find this one. And this one will get an additional 10k from its on place. So if we look at all this, and it also get 5k from this effect for that. So if we look at all this, the Vanguard is 53 here. So this will be 53k power. And then when it attacks, it'll get another 5k. So we swung with a 53k Vanguard with crit. Proto pretty much has to pure perfect guard that. And then we swing with another 53 plus 15 for 68 plus 8 for 76. And suddenly we've hit like an astronomical number with crit. And then we can still swing over here, getting another 5k back. And this is now a 20, 30, 43. Still a respectable number. And then we bounce something back. This is where it gets a little tricky. You're going to leave one unit in play, which is a little bit of a problem. So the question is, do you want to have this available for next turn or another search? So let's just bounce this so that we can leave the maximum shield value in hand, I guess. And in play. And then Yuiko would Soul Blast to bounce that. And then we'd bounce the Yuiko with the red text from Krysrain Cadenza. So that's what a Divine Skill focusing everything on the Vanguard might look like. Let's show what it looks like when we put everything on the rear with Divine Skill. So so we're gonna have essentially the same setup as we always do. Put 2 soul back. Call the Restander. Call Yuika. Call this. Assume that Hi-Fi was put here. We gave 5k to the rear. And then we gave 5k to itself. We activated the Vanguard skill. We gave 15k to Krysrain. Krysrain gave 10k to the Vanguard. Resius gave 10k to Krysrain. Yuika's 5k. And we have Persona right again. So then now we have a pattern that looks more like this, where we go 38 again into a 35, 45, 55, bouncing this, swinging with the Vanguard, putting this in the Soul, standing this, drawing a card, and then boosting, twin driving. Oh, we hit a crit. So this is interesting. We can either, and generally speaking, it's probably going to be better to put the power and crit onto the Fran set, so that both of our remaining attacks will have crit if the opponent's at 4. Alternately, we could put the power on the Vanguard and the crit on the Vanguard to make the called unit bigger. And that's just going to depend on circumstance. And then we do the same thing. We call this, we Soul Blast out 2, and then we Soul Blast for Divine Skill. Then we Soul Blast out that. We bounce this for the Divine Skill as well. And that will search the card that we called last time, giving itself another 10k. Alternately, we can do something like call Resius if that's still in the deck to give the 10k over here. Let's assume we did this one. So we have a 10k here. The Vanguard was a 33, so this becomes a 33, 43, 51. 61 if we had gotten the trigger and put that here, but 51 is still a pretty good number overall. And this is crit, and then over here, this rear guard is going to, after this swings, this rear guard will swing, this will get another 5k, and we'd have 40, 50, 60, 70, 83. So we have a bunch of really strong tags. This was 36 boosted by Resius with a crit and twin drive, so they had to perfect guard it to be safe. This then was a tremendous number with crit, and then this was also a big swing with crit. And once again, we can, of course, bounce this. This can be bounced by Francet, or this can be bounced by Francet, and then Yuika gets bounced. And then we have our looping aggression, leaving us now to only have to consider the anti-prison attack pattern. So, first things first, we need to get to 0 in Soul. Very easy to do against prison. You just assume that we Persona Road and then Soul Blasted something to call from the prison, and just use that in the process of assembling our full board. So we still want to set up the exact same attack pattern of units, except the only difference being is that we're going to use our prison to call as much of this as possible. This card is excellent against prison because it soul charges on place optionally. So if we get rid of all of our soul every turn, the grade 4 Seraph can't imprison from our soul. And if we get rid of all our units every turn, they can't imprison from our board. So that will leave them only the 2 cards in hand that they get off of the on-place effect of the grade 4. And that's going to be our goal, is to restrict them to only receiving those 2 cards for their prison. So we're going to use this to soul charge. We're going to use the soul from that to try to call out as much of our board as possible from the prison. If we don't have units in the prison that are good for our attack pattern, that's fine. We're just going to call over them. You just want to get the prison as empty as possible. So if you can imprison as many copies of this as possible, then you call one of this. It replaces its own cost from the Soul Blast. And then you can use that soul to call another one, soul charge, soul blast, call another thing for prison. You can essentially just chain these together to empty your prison out quickly. Keep that in mind. It's a play that a few other decks can do too. Things like decks like Cindy or decks that play the Burrow Mushrooms can do it as well. But that's going to be one of our tools for emptying the prison quickly and keeping it low. So after we've gotten to 0 in soul, by calling out from the prison as much as we can, we do a similar attack pattern where we swing here, and we swing, we bounce this, and then when the Vanguard swings, this goes to soul, stands this, we do our normal attack pattern, swing, drive checks, and then when we swing this, we bounce this, and then the Yuika soul blasts out the card that we use to restand to bounce this, and then we bounce this. And as you can see, we have no cards on the battlefield that can be put into prison, making our prison count very small, keeping the opponent from hitting that 10 in prison to get the crit and high power front row. And that's going to make it harder for them to pressure us, which is then in turn going to make it more likely that we survive and get to do this to them again. And as long as we can keep throwing, as you saw, that was our normal attack pattern. That was our normal board state. We're able to essentially operate at full power while mitigating heavily prison's ability to operate at full power. So really, it's all on them to try to get out of this quickly, because all we're doing is our normal gameplay. We don't have to adjust basically anything. The only thing we have to adjust is to make sure that we use all of our soul. And if we want to divine skill, then we just make use of some of our soul charger, and we don't soul blast everything out, and we just make sure that we have 2 in soul left over to go into this card off of our divine skill. Although worth noting that we don't necessarily need to use this. If we can empty for our divine skill, but leave 1 in soul from either Persona Ride or from soul charging from this card, it's actually often just better to call one thing and not go for this like super powerful card here. We can just call like the 1 Resius to give the 10k to the rear, or just call the where is he? Or where is she? because all the lyrical cards are feed. We can either just call Resius to make the other rearguard big, or just call this card to make itself big. And then Franset can bounce this, and then Uika can bounce Franset, and the Vanguard can bounce Uika. So we can get the looping board state with no units left over, and still do our Divine Skill, and still have high power attacks on everything. We're only giving up a little bit of power to not go for Tol Mana plus this in a boosted column. So we're not really sacrificing anything, but Prison has to contend with our full power pattern while also having to deal with the fact that they're not at full prison. If we're going first, we can often empty our prison on our first Krysrain turn and then leave them with not enough to get triple drive if they don't have a good hand when they go up to their first grade 3 turn. So keep that in mind. That's going to... Oftentimes, Prison's going to cap out at something like getting 5 in Prison, because they'll successfully get, you know, like their grade 4 and the grade 1 that searches for the grade 4 off. So that card in Prison is 1 from drop, and then they'll get 2 from your hand with the grade 4 Seraph, and then that's only 3. But then if they play something like 2 Restanders the front row, they'll get 2 more from your drop and have 5. But anything beyond that, they're often going to have to call over their own units and start losing card advantage, which is also good for you. And it's basically impossible for them to do all that and get to 10 in Prison in the same turn. So if you can play your cards right, and if you can aggressively empty out your Prison, you can often just never have to deal with the full 10 in Prison ability for the whole game. And that means that as long as you're hitting like a reasonable amount of triggers and they're not sacking you, it's going to be very hard for Prison to kill you. And Prison's one of the best decks in the format right now, so that's a very good matchup to have essentially a free win against. That's Krysrain. This deck is highly customizable. Because you have hard search effects and because you want a variety of names, you can kind of tweak this to add whatever tech you want. There's a lot of crazy cards in Lyrical that do some very wacky things. So if you want to look through the entire card pool and find secret tech that suits you perfectly, this is definitely one of the best decks in the format to try to do that on. If you really like making a list your own because it has, you know, personalized card choices that only you are playing and nobody else in the world is, Krysrain is a great deck for that, for customizability. It also is just a reliable, hard-hitting, aggressive deck. If you just want something that's easy to play, that hits big numbers, this deck is also good for that. It doesn't really have that complicated a board state attack pattern. Essentially, you just do the same one that I've shown you over and over again, with adjustments based on context and stuff. And yeah, there's also an order variant to this where you play Stragas and you play the Willista ride line instead. You could look into that if you want to customize this deck even further. That has its own trade-offs, but also some very strong pros. You can just look at this and see that it's got solid tournament results already. I think it's got a first place and a couple tops. So it's already winning events. It's already competing well in multiple events because it's not just one event that got a fluke win at. And it has a good matchup spread. There's no truly unwinnable matchup because at the end of the day, you could always just hit like a 60k Vanguard and with crit, and the opponent could just not have a perfect card and die. Nothing is unwinnable. You always can just get lucky. And that's not true of every deck. Some decks you can get lucky and you still can't win. So I do recommend giving this deck a shot. It is kind of on the pricier end. You know, you're playing 3 Uikas, you're playing 4 Fransets, you're playing another couple expensive cards. There's no way around that. The expensive cards in Krysrain Cadenza are staples that are like mandatory inclusions. So this is not a budget deck, but it is a very strong and fun deck. So if you're looking for something really aggressive, if you want the most competitive lyrical deck in the format right now, I think this is it, and I think you should give it a shot. And that's all for now, and I'll see you next time.